Jake, I want to bring up another issue because it's in the news, and I think it's all related. We had a horrible situation this week, but a lot of sports commentators and sports writers talked about it, but they're not experts in the field like you are. And I feel that domestic violence, in many cases, is a direct correlation to drug abuse. Like a perfect example, I don't even want to mention his name, but the Giants kicker that was put on the exempt list. Well, first of all, there's 20 documented cases, probably more, of him abusing his ex-wife. But the thing they talk about in Hawaii, that he was drunk as a skunk, banging on her hotel door, and it was so bad they had to move her to a different hotel room. And I got to believe that that's a direct result, that when someone abuses alcohol or drugs, one aspect is they're going to abuse their spouse because they're out of control with drugs, and that's a direct correlation. Andy, your thoughts?
Well, I don't think that it's necessarily the case that everyone who abuses drugs would physically abuse their partner or their children, for example. But certainly that would be a risk factor because, you know, you take drugs and alcohol and it changes your consciousness, it reduces your inhibitions, it could bring out your aggression, and so it can be a contributing factor. I think what's most appalling about this situation, above and beyond the obvious, which is no one deserves to be abused, whether it's physically or emotionally, and we had a show on bullying last week, which is another form of abuse. But in terms of domestic violence, what we have is a huge corporation, the National Football League, that for years and years and years has looked the other way. So when we talk about denial and we talk about enabling, we're talking about an institution that still hasn't gotten it together. And when the president of the New York Giants, you know, gets the news about this individual having been a serial abuser of his wife, and then he says, well, we don't really know what the extent of it is, despite the fact that this was a fact, it's just unacceptable.
And I just got to cut in because things I read, I'm so incredulous about this that I think it's important we talk about it. After Mara heard about 20 cases of abuse, he rewarded him with a $4 million contract. And then I was listening to an interview on WFAN, and Mike Francesa asked John Mara, he said, did you ever speak to the kicker's wife? And he said, no. How could you're a professional football team. How could you not interview the wife once? And then, but you know that he abused her 20 times and you reward him with a $4 million contract? And the NFL gives him a 1-game suspension? I just think this is just such a black mark for the NFL.
Well, it's a system that is morally corrupt, and that, you know, now that this is something that's out in the news, the media is covering it. It's something that was under the covers before. There were a lot of things that went on. I mean, I don't have to mention names, but I can go back to when I was a kid, and I know of very prominent Hall of Fame players who were perpetrators of domestic violence and child abuse and so forth. So, you know, it's easy to point a finger at the NFL, but I think that our society as a whole has had to come a long way, and apparently we still have a way to go. But yeah, it's I share your outrage, and you know, there needs to be a focus on more than just the bottom line, you know, when it comes to the destruction of human life, as we see in these and many, many, many other cases.
And I'll tell you something. When his dad owned the team, I'll remember this. I'll never forget this story. When Wellington Mara was the owner of the team, the Giants drafted a player from Nebraska named Christian Peter. When Wellington Mara's wife found out that this guy dragged his girlfriend 8 flights of stairs by her hair down 8 floors in a dorm, she was adamant that they cut him right away, and he was cut right away, never played. So I'm sure that if he was alive, he would not be happy at his son's actions.
You know, part of the problem and what we're finding is that, you know, short of graphic evidence, in this case there was a journal that the individual kept which detailed, and it was part of his recovery as I understand, but it detailed, you know, some of his acts of abuse. And a few years ago with Ray Rice of the, you know, Baltimore Ravens, there was a videotape of him in an elevator cold-cocking, you know, his wife. And so short of that kind of evidence, it gets swept under the rug. So that's part of the problem also, is that these graphic accounts, whether in writing or whether right before our eyes through the, you know, the magic of video, which is everywhere now, it still gets probably unreported, underestimated, and not treated with the kind of care and consequences that are needed.
Absolutely. Jake, you want to say a few words on this horrible case?
Absolutely. Well, you know, the NFL is, out of all sports, it gets, you know, the most fans, the most attention, the most money, but ultimately it's about influence. And a lot of owners, you know, they'll think that they could change a player who has domestic violence if they have a talent. You know, they think, you know, through a structure of a team, he'll change. That player, you know, doesn't need football. He needs help. And, you know, a lot of these owners just get caught up in the talent that the players have. You know, you saw last year at the Dallas Cowboys and one of this, you know, this hardy defensive end that they had, or, you know, and it's about understanding who watches the game. And right now, you've got kids watching. They're looking up to these athletes, and you have to put down the hammer. And I think, you know, organization structures really go forward when you're bringing in this new paradigm that just does not tolerate domestic violence in any way, shape, or form. Even if you are, you know, gaining in the short term, you know, the Maras or any of these other families will be hurt long term, because we have people who have voices, and you know, the more that, you know, these video cameras are bringing this up, and the more that, you know, we're seeing it as a problem, the more voices we have, the more of a consciousness that we'll have that just will not tolerate this old paradigm, caveman, you know, type thinking. So it will change and will not be tolerated. Yeah.